Good evening. Welcome to Boarding School 360 webinar series. We are so glad to have you all joining us this evening. My name is Katie Garrett of Garrett Educational Consulting and Boarding School 360. In addition to assisting families with both the boarding school and college process through our educational consulting services, we have also launched Boarding School 360 to serve as a resource for students and their families to learn more about boarding schools in general, as well as specific schools. Tonight begins our series of webinars to educate families on the boarding school process, especially as it relates to COVID. So tonight's topic will be on how to research boarding schools during COVID. And joining us tonight on our panel discussion, we have Teddy from Blair, Shay from Chatham Hall, Jordan from Western Reserve, and Evan from Rectory. So I'm going to let each of them introduce themselves and their titles and their schools and give a brief overview of each of their schools. So Teddy, let's start with you.
Hi everyone, good evening. Thanks for joining us. My name is Teddy Wenner. At Blair Academy. The reminder here. So happy to have you chat with us this evening. Blair is a school of 460 students, high school students, 9 through 12, with some postgraduate in the northwest corner of New Jersey, about an hour from Newark Airport. So it's a pretty easy flight path back and forth from various locations. We're 80% boarding, high percentage of boarding, and 50-50 boy-girl split. Sort of a traditional style boarding school, and then we'll certainly get into that a little bit more, but that'll be it for now. Thanks for joining us, and happy to hear all your questions.
Hi, everyone. I'm Shay Barnhart. I'm the Dean of Enrollment at Chatham Hall, and we are an all-girls boarding school located in Chatham, Virginia. We are 160 girls. I bet you're wondering where Chatham, Virginia is. We are in South Central Virginia, so we're about an hour from Greensboro, North Carolina. 94% of our students board. We only have 10-day students in our entire population. And with girls from 24 states and 11 countries, they are from all over the US and the world. We have some amazing signature programs that we're happy to dive into later. And if you have any questions, please let us know. So happy to be here. Thanks.
Hi, everybody. My name is Jordan Shriver, and I'm Associate Director of Admission at Western Reserve Academy. We are located in Hudson, Ohio, and that's about 40 minutes south of Cleveland. Hudson's a quaint little town. It's a great community for our boarding school to be located in. We're co-ed with about 400 students, about 2/3 boarding. Really looking forward to engaging with you tonight, and thanks so much, Katie, for putting this on.
Hi everyone, my name's Evan Campbell. I'm the Senior Enrollment Manager from Rectory School. We are a junior boarding school, which makes us unique amongst the schools that are presenting to you tonight. So we actually have boarders in the 5th through 9th grade with our students matriculating to high schools, much like the ones that we have 3 awesome panelists here tonight. We are located in the northeast corner of Connecticut. We're about an hour and 15 minutes from Boston and about 50 minutes from Providence. We have 150 boarders on campus, with about 2/3 of those students being boys and 1/3 being girls. And we also have about 80 day students, with about 45 being girls and 35 being boys. Really excited to be here. Thank you, Katie, for having us, and I can't wait to hopefully answer all your guys' questions.
Perfect. Thank you all for being here. I really appreciate it. I know this is a crazy busy time of year for all of you, so I appreciate you lending your expertise to help guide these kids in their boarding school search. So first thing I thought we could discuss is navigating a boarding school's website. Oftentimes, they can be a great source of information. But I think for a lot of families, they can feel overwhelming. I think right now, especially because we are so virtual, a lot of, it's not just true of boarding schools, a lot of businesses have done it too, but have really ramped up their online presence. And I think for families that can feel overwhelming about where should I be looking, and there's just so much information, and where should I focus my efforts when I'm doing, my initial boarding school research. So I thought we could kind of have each of you go through like one of the typical pages that are on, I think I checked all y'all's, y'all have similar profile pages. And so the first tab that we usually see is the About tab. So Evan, if you could talk a little bit about what's on the About tab, what things, you know, families should be looking for or making note of, that would be great.
Absolutely. The About tab is basically going to be your home base on any website. And for me, I think it's a really good place to start when you don't know whether or not you're going to be interested in the school. And it should help make up your mind just a little bit. The couple things that I think you should really pay attention to, typically on the About tab at this point, every school is going to have a COVID update. And they're going to tell you really what they have going on at their school, the protocols that they have in place, whether or not they're going to accept visitors or not. That also might be on the admissions tab too. But you will be able to read sort of their COVID update, what's going on at each school, because as you'll listen to us throughout the course of this panel, every school is a little bit different. We're located in 4 different states. We're different sizes of schools. So we do manage things just a little bit differently. The next thing that would be important to you would be a directory. So sometimes on the admissions page, you can see everyone and their email addresses that you're going to need to reach out to. Sometimes you can't. On the athletics page, sometimes you can for the coaches, sometimes you can't. So looking on the About tab and the school directory, it should allow you to see everyone that you're going to want to reach out to and their email address or their phone number. The next most important one, in my opinion, is the Meet the Headmaster page. The headmaster or headmistress, depending on the school that you are applying to, that person is going to be arguably the most important person to dictate your experience at that school, because their vision is the one that is going to drive the school. You know, the way that they want the school to run, the programs that they want the school to have, you know, certainly they're not a monarch who's just completely in charge, but the vision that they have is going to really dictate the path that the school takes, especially during your child's time there at the school. And then for me, the most important part, if you don't go anywhere else on a website, click the About tab and go to the At a Glance page. That's going to allow you to see the location of the school, how many students are there, what the breakdown of boys and girls are, how many students of color might be at the school, any of their signature programs, AP offerings if they have them, their athletics offerings. It's really that one digestible, is this school a good fit for me or is it not? I would say just, you know, out of advisement for you guys, when you're looking at a school, and I know we all said something similar, really look at the breakdown between boarding students and day students, knowing that if you're going to be a boarding student, having a school that's 2/3, 3/4, 80% boarders is going to be really important to your experience. If you go to a school that's only 1/3 boarding and it's 2/3 day, it's going to be a completely different experience. So that's just one thing that I would say to just keep an eye on as you go through that tab.
Perfect. Thank you so much for that. Okay, so the next tab would be admissions. So Teddy, I'm going to ask you to speak on the admissions side of the website.
Sure. The admissions tab is in effect the gatekeeper into the sort of the soul of the school. If it's done well, you should be able to get a true sense of the school and get their personality through the admissions tab. We are all, as Katie mentioned, trying to figure out this virtual world, and I think even more so this year, we have put a lot of focus and effort into that admissions tab and to try to add different layers to your experience to give a full picture of who a school is. And I think that's ultimately what you're trying to find out through that admissions tab, is ways to interact and be directed into various other parts of the website to create that full picture of a school. And I think that's really important, that you dive into both multiple points within those tabs, within that tab, and also to keep on coming back, because admissions pages are updated frequently. There are always new events going on, there's new information. It's not a static interaction. We want it to be dynamic. It's updated almost on a weekly basis in a lot of places. And the more that you can drive back to that page, and then that page will drive you out to different parts of the website, whether those are stories that are coming up or admissions events that are happening, things that the alumni have been doing around the world. That often is found in one-stop shopping of the admissions page. So after the About page, I would say that admissions page is the second stop you should go to really find out who the school is, and then it will drive you to the various other spots.
Thanks so much, Teddy. All right, Shay, you're up to talk about the academics page.
Yes, happy to do so. So when you look at any academics page, it's really easy to say, look at the curriculum course and the courses offered. And so that'll be readily available at all of our schools. You'll be able to see some of the unique course offerings that all of our schools offer. You'll, of course, probably be able to see our school profile, just test scores, different co-curriculars that are happening. You also, though, I think, need to dive into kind of how kids learn at all of our schools. So I think you'll find some of our schools are really hands-on. Some use the Harkness method, which kind of promotes discussion and encourages, a fun learning environment. You might also see some resources that are used to enhance learning. Some of our schools have academic skills programs, so that include maybe group or peer tutoring. You'll also probably find under the academics page, for most of us, the college counselor and their role in the school and kind of that program. And that's a great one to really dive into and a really, really important part of your time at all of our schools. And at least for Evan's school, you might find the secondary placement page as well. So he spoke to kind of the high school that his school places in high school. So that would be the equivalent of kind of the college counseling process. You might also find just some of the global programs and different things that our schools all offer. And so those are great things to kind of dive into. And of course, a great thing is to look at each section. So the humanities section or STEM or the arts, and kind of see those teachers that are going to be in the classroom with you and see what they do. A lot of our schools have a lot of video content, and you can really dive in to what they're doing. In the age of COVID, you might even see the online course offerings that are happening. And we're going to talk probably about this more in a little bit, but how you can kind of engage that way remotely as well. So those are just some of the things that you'll probably find on the academic site. So I think it's a great way for you to just dive in and see what that classroom experience is going to be all about.
Perfect. Thank you, Shay. That was great. Okay, so I did a little combo for Jordan. I combined two of the A's. It was funny when I went through it today, I was like, they're all A's. Was that on purpose, with admissions, about academics, athletics, and art? So Jordan is going to speak about athletics and arts, those two tabs.
Sure. So these pages are really the pages where you're going to find out more about your passions outside of the classroom and outside of the curriculum. The first stop is really just figuring out what those offerings are and if they do align with your passions, whether it be a specific sport or a specific type of dance offering or a specific type of ensemble. There are going to be all those types of listings there for you. The next thing I would suggest is taking a look to see if there's an afternoon requirement and what that requirement might be and kind of how that might align to your philosophy or what you're personally looking for. There's going to be a lot of resources that will help you determine whether a certain school is basically a fit for you regarding your personal goals and what opportunities you want to engage in. So there's going to be lots of schedules and coach contacts. I really suggest taking a deep dive into those schedules. If you're looking to be part of an athletic team, that'll give you a good sense of level of competition. There'll be facility tours. There will be descriptions about whether students can specialize in sports, all of those sorts of things. But it's just a really great resource overall to make sure that the school and the school's afternoon philosophy is a personal fit with yours.
Great, thank you. Okay, and then the last tab, or most prominent last tab, is student and campus life. So Teddy and Shay, I'll let you sort of take this on together.
Yeah. I'm happy to start with just campus life is so important, and I Teddy Also, it's from a school that has a really, really high boarding population. So one thing that you're going to see, I think, on all of our sites is what you're up to on the weekends and what those activities look like. And I think clubs and weekend activities, I think, are probably my huge two things that I would say you should look into, because that co-curricular experience is just as important as what you're going to learn on a field hockey field or in the classroom. But Teddy, I'll let you kind of expand more too.
Yeah, I would completely agree. We are boarding schools, and if you travel away from home, you're going to be living there on the weekends. As Evan said earlier, the ratio is really important. So if you're at a high percentage boarding school, what they do on the weekends is really important to your overall happiness. You don't want to be on a campus that is empty on the weekends and be the only boarder who is there. And then also, you don't want to be on a campus even if there are a lot of people and there's not a lot going on. So I think the more you can dive into that page and find out what those weekend activities are and the events that they're hosting, the clubs that you can be involved in, because those typically meet on the weekends. I would just say that's all really important to creating that life of the school, which is also a part of what you're trying to find. And I think they do vary quite a bit. And I also say the other part that is on that site typically, or on that tab, are the traditions of the school. And some of those fun traditions at each of our schools really make us who we are. And so you can really find about who a school is through those traditions, whether that's family style lunches or dinners, or some competition that they have with other schools, or just some funny, silly things that they do on an annual basis. You can find that on that tab. And I think that's really important, is trying to find that next spot for them.
Great. Thank you so much, Teddy. Okay, so the next topic that we're going to discuss is ways to connect with the schools. So we know that because of the current pandemic, a lot of our in-person connections between families and students and the schools has been deterred. And so a lot of it has gone virtual. And because the online offerings can be so abundant, it can be difficult to figure out which ones you should plug into, depending on where you are in your boarding school search. So I thought it might be helpful to talk through what some of the different offerings are. And then we can end with talking about how some of the in-person things will be rolling out, either this fall or winter. So the first one I wanted to talk about is the group sessions. So kind of the webinars and information sessions that are being offered by the school. Teddy, do you want to start with that?
Sure, I'd be happy to. Yeah, the group sessions typically are more of the 30,000 foot overview of the schools. They are normally webinar based. They can be meeting based, but they're the general overview on various programs, who the school is and what they're all about. And there typically is a little less interaction with the audience, but that serves a purpose. That enables you as the user to sort of sit back and digest the information that's coming at you and say, is this a school that I want to dive a little deeper into? But even with those general sessions, when you're not doing a one-on-one individual interaction with the school, I think it's important to still listen to consistent messaging from session to session. If you are on 2 or 3 sessions, general sessions at a school, are you hearing the same words used throughout? If we're doing our job correctly at Blair, you'll hear student-centered, relationship-based learning. That's really important to who we are as a school and as a community. And even in the general sessions, that should be used from school to school. And I think that's important. And then once you are taking part of those general sessions and sort of taking those nuggets away, then you follow up with the individual session to get that more personal touch.
Thanks. Jordan, do you have anything to add from WRA?
No, I think, Teddy said it best. That's the goal of those sessions, is to really provide an overview in that 30,000-foot view. I think a goal from, the student side is what we hope to create in those types of environments. We want to create a spark, right? The student walks away with a spark that they want to learn, something that they want to learn more about, whether that's STEM education, whether that's the lacrosse team, whether that's community service. We're going to talk about here a lot of different other individual ways you can continue to connect with schools, and that's where you're going to be able to dive more deeply into those topics that you're really passionate about.
Perfect.
You're muted, Katie.
Sorry, I just realized that. Thank you. So we are now going to talk about individual sessions. So that could either be, meeting with admissions reps or students, or individual, virtual tours. So Evan, I'm going to let you start with that from a junior boarding school perspective.
Yeah, I would say it's likely more of just a school perspective in general. As Teddy said, when you go to, a webinar or an info session on a school, you're really just trying to get a flavor of it. And you're trying to decide whether or not you're going to continue on the journey of exploring that school as a possibility, either for you as a student or for your child if you're a parent. These meetings with students, the tours, that's when you've decided, you know what, we're not going to dip the toe in, we're going to jump in the pool, and we're going to really get to know a little bit more about the community. In terms of meeting with students in tours, right now, you are a little bit at the mercy of the schools you're looking at. And I don't mean that in a negative sense, but just in terms of what those schools are providing programmatically. I know at Rectory School right now, our tours are all virtual tours. And we have our first one tomorrow morning. It's a virtual tour. We're going to click play. Everyone's going to be able to watch through. And then immediately after, we're going to host an open coffee hour with our entire admissions office. That's what we're offering in terms of our virtual tour. Now, you're going to hear from Shay in a minute, and Chatham Hall might be doing something completely different. So I would say really be open and be flexible as a family. We are all trying to plan out what we think gives you the best view of our school. We're not trying to do necessarily what's most convenient for us. It's really trying to make sure that you get what you need as an applicant from our perspective. In terms of individual meetings with students, I know a lot of schools are going to have, ambassador-led, that's what we'll call student tour guides, ambassador-led tours, or they'll have one-on-one, panel, or not one-on-one, group panels with students as well. Once again, that's all decided really by the school you're applying to. What I would say in general, as an applicant, feel empowered. If you want to talk to somebody from a school, ask to talk to somebody from a school. If you want to talk to a couple students, ask to talk to a couple students. If you want to make sure that you talk to students who have the same profile as you, ask to talk to students from the same profile as you. Because if you are a Jamaican girl and you have a student ambassador who's a Chinese boy, there's nothing wrong with that. I'm sure he'll be well-spoken and he'll talk about his experience, but inherently his experience will be a little bit different. So I would say you're going to have programmatically everything set up for you, but understand that you are investing your two, I would say, most important things in your life, right? Your child and your money into your next school. So don't be afraid to be a little assertive and ask to talk to people that you want to.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, Evan, I think you said it perfectly. I think we're all doing very different things, but I wouldn't be afraid to say, I love field hockey and I would love to speak to the field hockey captain, or I would love to speak to the lacrosse coach, or I would love, at Chatham Hall in a normal year, we host overnights for our prospective students. So, if you really wanted to learn about dorm life, all of our schools, would be happy to connect you either with a dorm parent or maybe a roommate pair who can tell you about what it's like to have a roommate. Those are all things that are easily accessible to you actually remotely, which is a really interesting kind of spin on the positive of this, is that, there's an opportunity here to actually individually make sure that you get as much from your visit as possible. Sometimes when you visit a school, it's kind of like, oh, I forgot to ask that, or, oh, I forgot to meet that person, or, but here you can contact us again and we can set you in touch with someone, or, and throughout the process. So I think that's hugely helpful. I know at Chatham Hall, we're doing, we have a virtual tour on our website, but we're also doing FaceTime tours with individual girls. We are doing on-campus tours by appointment only. So again, every student's every school's doing something different for their students, but I'd be really open to just every school and kind of explore a lot of things virtually while you can.
Perfect. Thank you so much. Okay, so Jordan, I think we touched on this a little bit, but I want to dive a little bit deeper on the special interest outreach. So if a student has an activity or an athletic or academics that they're interested in, how do they go about learning more about those specific things?
Sure. So as all of my colleagues have kind of said here prior, if there's something that you're really interested in learning more about, take the initiative and reach out, and we'll be happy to connect you with students, coaches, teachers, whatever it may be that you're interested in. Now, I think a lot of our schools will be doing this in various ways. I can talk about how we're going to do it here at Western Reserve Academy, but we're going to have lots of different, special interest programs that we'll be doing kind of virtual sessions on that our coaches and program heads will be inviting folks to and are welcome to the public. So if you're a lacrosse player, if you're interested in a cancer immunology program, or if you're interested in a dance program, all of our schools will be putting on various virtual sessions where you can engage with our coaches and our teachers, engage with our students, and engage with folks that are interested in the same things that you are. And I think that's the most powerful, where you can have a conversation with somebody that's had similar experiences to you and that has similar passions.
Great, thank you. Okay, so we can talk a little bit, and I'm gonna let each of you kind of address the virtual visits, what those look like for like a one-on-one virtual visit. And then if you also want to talk about your school's restricted in-person visits and what those look like. I think there's, obviously everyone's at a different spot in their entertaining of prospective students. So I'll let each of you speak to that. So Shay, if you want to start, that'd be great.
Yeah, absolutely. So for an individual campus visit, ours at Chatham Hall might include a tour if you wish, but also engaging virtually in our classes. We aren't doing class visits right now as part of an on-campus option. So that's kind of unique in that you'll kind of be able to log into a class and try a freshman English class or, try astrology or anatomy or all these classes that we are having to do virtually as well to bring kind of Chatham Hall to you. And also for our students who are learning remotely right now, some of whom are abroad and have different travel restrictions in place. So that's something really neat that you should take full advantage of at all of our schools, because there's so many amazing classes that you can kind of sit in on and really see what the student dynamic is like and what classes are really like. You can also, as I share, kind of shadow a student throughout their day, either going through a tour or also dorm life or something in specific to athletics. For the on-campus option, what you can kind of expect is we do have a health screening, masks are required, we do temperature checks, and we right now are doing our campus tours in the afternoon. Our students have athletics or musical or dance or writing from 4 o'clock to 6 o'clock. So we're kind of scheduling that time to take you through the buildings, and then you can observe an athletics practice if you wish. And that's kind of what we are doing right now, but I'll let everybody else hop in.
Jordan, you want to talk about WRA?
Sure. Yeah, so we're operating in a similar way. We are offering in-person visits. That in-person visit really does only consist of an interview or a tour, an interview with a member of the admission office, and then another conversation with a program head or a coach. And we want to make sure that you have all the necessary information that you need leaving our campus. We also want to make sure that we're doing it in the most safe and healthy way. As Shay said, you can expect kind of a health questionnaire from us. So don't be alarmed when that hits your email. Masks are required, but we are offering lots of virtual ways to connect. Individual tours with our student tour guides. We'll be hosting a lot of different panels. So there are a lot of different ways to connect, and just be on the lookout for the right one.
Great. Evan.
Yeah, I think I let the cat out of the bag the last time I spoke, but we're not having any in-person visits for the foreseeable future. Obviously, we would love to have guests on our campus as soon as we can, but right now with us being a junior boarding school, 5th through 9th grade, we have an elementary school on campus for day students. We actually have an infant, toddler, and daycare program. So we have students from Rectory as young as 8 weeks old. We made the decision to really close off our campus, which I know sounds unfair, but at least positively, and I've said to a lot of families as they've gone through the process, in my opinion, it also still makes our process the epitome of fairness, because it doesn't matter who you are, you can't come on campus right now. You know, if Jeff Bezos wanted to come visit our campus with his son, I don't even know if he has a son or daughter, but if he did, and they wanted to come visit campus, they wouldn't be allowed. So everything's going to be run virtually for us. We're going to have our virtual tour. We had narration done by our entire admissions office, plus our director of residential life, our athletic director, and a couple teachers, just to make sure that you heard voices and saw faces throughout the duration of the tour. With coffee hours with us right after. We're going to do all of our Zoom interviews, and then we're still going to host panels. We're going to put together a podcast. We're going to try to do as many things to engage our constituents, our applicants, as possible. But right now, everything will be located online for us.
Perfect. Teddy.
Yeah, thanks. I would say the piece with the virtual process, and I'll take a step back for a second. I think there's real power in the virtual visit and the virtual offerings from all the schools. I was just on a call today with a consortium that Blair's with, and we were chatting about sort of the double-edged sword of us getting excited for kids to come to campus for visits at some point this winter, juxtaposed against do we try to get them to interview just now virtually? And the consensus was really interview now, virtual visits, be a part of those now. Don't hold off for the hope that maybe a school is going to open in December or January and we'll come on campus and we'll see everything then. That's almost too late in the process because that is A, a busy time, and B, you've just lost weeks of interaction with the school. If you do a virtual visit next week with Blair and decide to do an interview, you'll be immediately connected to those program leaders and coaches who will continue that conversation with you over the coming months. And you'll start to build a relationship. And as much as we are excited about people coming to our campus, buildings and facilities don't create the community. It's the people and the culture, right? And I think through the virtual offerings, the visits, the things that we have created this year digitally, you can get that culture and community that way. Yes, seeing the buildings is fun and exciting and walk around the hallowed halls, so to speak. But most likely, even if you come to campus, they're not going to be students on campus. You're just going to be walking through empty buildings and seeing those facilities. So I just really encourage you as you're going through this process to start now with the virtual component. Be engaged early with all of us, and then that will help you actually get a true sense of the school earlier rather than later in the process. That all being said, we are having on-campus drive-throughs and things like that now at Blair, but still that personal interaction, which is so important to finding that school and the culture, is best done, I think, right now virtually for all of us. And I think that should be embraced and not like, oh, I can't come to campus. Have fun with the virtual opportunities that all the schools are offering.
Great. Okay, so that brings up a good question. I have found that a lot of the families that I'm working with are feeling overwhelmed by the number of virtual events at all the schools, and are saying it's hard for them, the kids, to manage schoolwork and their extracurricular activities, and we're averaging this many virtual events per week, and but I think they also want to make sure that the schools know that they're interested. So maybe you guys could give a little, some words of wisdom about what is an appropriate number of virtual events to attend.
I can start this one off. So I work in our admissions office now. For the last 6 years, I actually ran our school's secondary school placement office. And looking at our statistics for the last 6 years, our kids averaged applying to 7.6 schools per kid. So if you're applying to about 8 schools and your goal is to do 4 or 5 online programs with each school, you're talking about a lot of hours that you'd be investing into this process. My advice would be to do what you can and definitely do what's required, but everything else, digest at your own pace, take it step by step. My other bit of advice, and I know this isn't about volume, is to always watch what you're watching with a grain of salt. I know how much time and effort we put into our virtual tour. I know that for my voiceover, I did about 37 different takes to make sure that my verbiage was exactly what I wanted to say. So digest everything with a little bit of a grain of salt, knowing that it is curated for you. We all wish you could be on campus. We all wish that you could be here, because more than anything, I want you, and we would all want you to see the way kids interact with kids and kids interact with adults that have no idea you're even on campus, because that's what you see from a school. But just to go back from the question, I'd say digest what you can, do what you can. We all understand that you still have your school, that you still have your soccer team, that you still have your karate lessons, and you're playing the piano. And oh, by the way, you want to spend a night just as a family having dinner, right? So don't stress yourself out too much and spread yourself too thin. But certainly if there's something that interests you, I would tune in.
Would absolutely agree with that. And I would also ask, if some of these virtual events are also recorded. And so if they are, just ask the admission office, and they're probably happy to do it, or they can send it. And that way you can watch it or listen to it later, almost like a podcast, or almost, and so that might be an option for you as well. So don't let it bog down your experience.
Perfect. Thank you.
I was just going to say, I know there's a lot of talk about demonstrated interest and show the school that you really want to. I'll speak for ourselves, and I think I'm confident with the rest of our. We're not tracking numbers and how many things kids are on. We don't have the offices to do that. We don't have data crunchers hiding in the closet with their computer, figuring that all out, running spreadsheets. We are just trying to put things out there for you at different levels, whether that's the general session or the individual, to get engaged with us as a school. And if you already know that you've done this, we talk about art and science to this process, and the science part is finding out the data, sort of that 30,000 foot. If you've already done that filtering, and you want to come apply to Blair, there's no real reason necessarily to do some of those general sessions. You can dive right in and do the interview and maybe the personalized tour, which we have walking around campus, or the parent panels on Sunday when you get to speak with current families. That'll help filter out some of those sessions to Evan's point, that you're not doing 3 to 4 sessions with this school. You may just need to do 1 to 2 because you already know, okay, this is my list of 3 or 4 schools, and I'm diving in that way. But we're not tracking numbers. We realize this can be overwhelming, and we're just trying to help you find the best way to get that next layer of understanding, so that you can get that art of the process, which is the field.
Great. Thank you, Teddy, for adding to that. Okay, so the next topic I wanted to discuss is, I think that one of the biggest questions that people in admissions ask students and parents is, do you have any questions? And while there might be students and parents that come with their laundry list of questions of, every gory detail they need to know about what might happen over the next 3 or 4 years, I think for some parents and students, they probably do have questions, but they don't even know what questions to ask. So I thought we would go to our panel of admissions experts and have each of them give a question that they think a student should ask, and then their answer to it. And then we will go through with the parent questions as well. So, Teddy, you want to start?
Yeah, sure. Since it's the political season, I'll do the politician's answer. I'll sidestep that and sort of talk more broadly. I think number one thing in terms of questions to ask or how to respond to questions that we ask you, simply be truthful and honest and be yourself. Like that's ultimately what all of our questions are getting to, and the conversations that we're trying to have with you in the interview process is finding out who you are and getting to know you. We don't want you to pretend to be someone else. We don't want you to answer a question in a way that you think we want to hear it. I think that's really important. And an example I'll give is I asked a question to a young gentleman, said, tell me your favorite book that you've read recently, or just your favorite book in general. It's a pretty standard question. And his answer was, well, Dr. Seuss are the places you'll go. And it was like, oh, all right, that's an interesting one. That's, you know, a kid's book, a little kid's book. And I said, well, why? Tell me why that is such an important book to you. And his response was fantastic. He said, well, Mr. Weiner, every time I read that book or I see that book, I think of my grandfather. My grandfather used to read me that story every time I visited him. In the summer times, he had this cabin up in Maine, and I would spend the whole summer with him, and that was something that we do traditionally at night. We would read that story. So, and he passed away, and so every time I see that book, I think of my grandfather and those times spent with him up in Maine. And that is a fantastic answer. That's not something I was expecting, but it was truthful and honest, and it gave me a little bit of a window into who that gentleman was in front of me and the type of person that he would get, Blair. So I would say just be open and honest and be yourself, most important.
Great, thank you. Okay, Evan, top student question.
Yeah. I'm going to sort of follow Teddy. I just don't ever, when you're preparing for your interview, study 10 common interview questions that you're going to need to have your stock answer to. And your questions honestly should be dictated by who you are and your personality and the school you're interviewing with. You certainly want to make sure you do your research on a school. And I'm going to say this, don't ask Teddy, talk to me about your hockey program at Blair Academy, because they don't have a hockey program at Blair Academy, right? So you want to make sure you do a little bit of research so you don't ask those kind of questions. But honestly, I think one sort of stock question that can be really powerful is asking about the student experience of kids of a similar profile to you. You know, once again, if you are a girl from Bermuda or you're a boy from Thailand or wherever, ask about students from a similar profile, how they've done at your community. Right? How they've done in our communities, right? How they've done in our schools. What sort of classes have they taken? What success have they found? What struggles might they see? And if you're somebody who you're already thinking about, for us at a junior school, a high school matriculation, or for one of these high schools, a college matriculation, don't just look at that matriculation list. Be confident enough to ask, well, where have your Bermudian students have gone? Where have your Chinese students gone? Where have your Korean students gone? Right? Because once again, like I said about that tour guide, the experience of someone who's of a completely demographic and gender, yes, it's a little applicable because they were also a student at that school, but it's not completely applicable because they're not really you. They don't have your story. They don't have your experiences. They don't have your background. And so I think it's really important to ask about students from a similar background to you and how they've assimilated at those schools.
Good advice. Okay, Shay.
I think one of the best questions I've both seen on tour, like with student to student, but also gotten in the interview, is a student asking me to tell her about a student, a new Chatham Hall girl who tried something new that she had never tried before, and how it went. And I think that was one of the more compelling questions, and kind of really created a lot of great dialogue as well. I think sometimes when you're in 8th grade or 9th grade or 10th grade, of course you have things that you're passionate about and you love, but you also maybe are seeking out our schools because you're looking for something more, because you're interested in a lot of different things, and you might be a great lacrosse player or field hockey star, or you also may be a huge equestrian, but who also wants to try robotics and who has never been in an engineering club, or has never tried some of these amazing different programs that we all have to offer. And so I think that was one of the best questions I have either seen on a tour that has created a lot of great dialogue or gotten in an interview, is kind of helping both of us reflect on the fact that you don't have to have one thing to come to one of our schools. I think all of our students are really multifaceted, and a lot of them, they're all growing. They're all still discovering who they are. And so I think that was probably one of my top ones to receive.
That was a good one. Jordan.
Yeah, I'm going to kind of follow the lead of my fellow colleagues up here and sidestep the question a little bit. And that my question isn't really a question, or I guess it's not how you start the question. I'm always a fan of when students start a question with, tell me about a time when, or tell me a story about. I think those conversations often lead to real world examples that are really beneficial in this kind of determining fit process. So one of the questions that I really think is important as we're all boarding schools, and Teddy talked a little bit earlier about kind of relationship-based learning, is what that student-faculty relationship looks like. So if a student came to me and said, tell me about a time when you saw a really powerful experience between a student and a faculty member, or a really strong relationship between those two, I could talk about, my advisee who is a local student but is a boarder, and I sit with their parents at each of her soccer games. I could talk about an advisee who I just drove by one of our faculty members' homes the other day, and she takes our costume design class, and she was in their backyard at like 3 p.m. in the afternoon with like clothes on a line, cutting up a dress. Those are the types of relationships that you can expect at boarding school. But I really think it's important when you're approaching these questions to gather some of those examples by asking folks to tell a story or give an example.
Great. We had a question come through that kind of segues from what Jordan was just saying about how do you assess the types of relationships that will be established at boarding schools. I think what the question was trying to get at was, how do you assess if it's more of like a family feel, or if it's more of a community, or if the faculty and the students are more separated? How do you, as a parent, kind of assess that community culture within a school? So I don't know if one of you wants to jump in on that.
Yeah, I'll talk first. The thing I will say for parents is, I think in this process, you are essentially trying to find a school that feels like a larger extension of your own family, right? The same messaging, same morals, the same values. When you speak with an admissions officer, or when you are on a webinar, or you're listening to a parent panel, are you hearing sort of the same refrain that you would in your own household? And I think if the school is doing A, their job, and B, being honest, you'll feel that. And sometimes that will steer you one way, and then other times it will steer you in a different direction. But you can get those interactions. And that's ultimately what you're looking for, is to know that school has the mentors, role models, culture, the leadership, as Evan talked about in the beginning of the presentation. Why that is so important, because that's where your child is going to be going, and you want to rest assured knowing that they're in a place with similar mindset and similar people that are going to support but also push your son or daughter. I think that's really important.
And I think one thing also is just, I think all of our schools have a great parent network as well. And so I would use that as a parent. I mean, ask to speak to somebody in your area. So it's something that Evan's kind of talked about, or ask to speak to somebody who's not. Ask to speak to a senior parent, and maybe you're looking to enter the freshman grade. But I think parents will also be able to convey that sense and what they have seen as well. So don't be afraid to ask for that as a resource as well.
Great, thank you. Okay, so Shay, you're back up. Do you have any additional tidbits or advice for parents on questions they should ask outside of what you just said about relationships and community?
Gosh, okay. So for parents, I was trying to think. I think one of the things I always want parents to know, and I think sometimes either visiting or thinking about this as an option is such such an emotional thing. Your child's getting older and they might be living away from home. Is to not shy away from asking about things that they're either nervous about or fearful of. If you want to ask about the support all of our schools have, be that social emotional support, be that academic support, but to just have those questions ready and feel comfortable asking them, because we want honest dialogue, and we want your child to be really successful at Chatham Hall and at all of our schools. And so I think sometimes parents shy away from that, and I would tell them, I think my biggest piece of advice would be not to, because we want your kids to be really successful. And I think that a partnership that way, and making sure that you feel good about your decision and your choice, and that we have all the tools and knowledge that we need to make sure your child is successful, is what we want.
Great. Good advice. All right, Jordan,
Yeah.
any advice for parents?
Yeah, when I think from the parent lens, I think, when your child comes to boarding school, you're not only, sending them to be a part of our school communities, but a part of kind of our greater community as well. So I think asking questions about how schools partner in the local community, whether that be academic partnerships or internship partnerships, partnerships for real world learning. I think what's been kind of interesting to watch is COVID has really forced schools to be really creative in how they're partnering with their local community, whether that be from a health and safety lens or from producing masks in our innovation centers lens. So I think asking great questions about what that greater community looks like and how their child can be a part of it is really crucial.
Evan, do you have any parental advice?
I hate I hate saying this again, but once again, it really depends on you and your situation. Every family is looking at boarding schools for a different reason. If you were 100% happy, 100% satisfied with your current public school option, which is free, you wouldn't be going through this process. So there is a reason that you and your family is going through this process. I know that if I have a family that is huge into basketball and the kid goes to AAU tournaments all the time, what do you do about spring AAU tournaments? Does the student have to stay on campus? Are you able to work with us? That's a great question. If we have a student who's a really talented violinist, are they able to go into, our performing arts center after hours and practice on their own? Are there individual lessons that they can take? That's a great question. I had a parent a couple of years ago ask me, how much do I ask about diversity, equity, inclusion? It's a really important thing to our family, but I don't want to turn off the people who are interviewing my daughter. And I said, you have to ask a question, right? Because as much as you are interviewing at these schools, at all of our schools, you don't have to apply. So I think understanding that you still have power in this situation too, that yes, we are ultimately going to make a determination whether or not we are able to accept your child, but you also get to make the determination whether or not our school is the right fit for you and whether or not you're going to apply at our schools. So I really think, more than anything, you need to feel empowered as you go through this process to ask the questions that are important to you, because nobody likes a surprise. We don't want you to come to our school and be surprised about the way we do things and have it not be a fit for you, the same way that we don't want to find something out after you've been accepted, after you've been enrolled, or after you've been attending our school that we maybe could have taken care of in a conversation a year prior to.
Thank you. All right, Teddy, any final words of wisdom?
I don't know if there are words of wisdom, but I'll certainly talk. I'll just say, I'll wrap this conversation up with piggybacking off of Evan. The parents should really help in the science part of that process, asking those programmatic questions, the specific questions of how these certain things pertain to your son or daughter, and direct in that process. Don't lead, let the child reach that second level, which is the art of the process, as I spoke to earlier. So the parents are really on that first data-driven, program-specific, science sort of level And then once you filter those schools into those 5 or 6 schools, or 4 to 5 schools, however many it may be, then you let your son or daughter take the process from there and really get a sense of who the school is and whether they are drawn emotionally to that school and the art of the process. And I think that's really important.
Great, thank you. That's all great advice from all of you, for students and parents alike. I feel like the more advice they can get, the better, and the more perspective from y'all is great. I just want to thank you all on the panel for joining us for tonight's webinar. We really, really appreciate your willingness to share your expertise with us during these crazy times. We hope that if you joined us tonight, that you will consider coming for some of the upcoming webinars, which will all be held on Tuesdays at 7 p.m. Eastern Time. Some of the topics we have coming up are preparing for the virtual interview, which we touched on a little bit tonight, so we'll elaborate on that. Sort of tips for essay writing. We're going to do some night of reflections from boarding school alumni. So hoping to have, an alumni from a junior boarding school, and then some alumni from boarding school to sort of talk about how boarding school really shaped who they are today. And then we're going to do one on athletic recruiting and what that looks like from the junior boarding school and boarding school perspective. So a recording of tonight's webinar, along with the other webinars, will be uploaded to the Boarding School 360 website. And for those of you who attended, I hope you found it beneficial as you start to research schools and navigate the boarding school process, and we wish you the best of luck. So thank you all. Thank you to the panel. Again, I really, really appreciate it. And I'll look forward to the day that we can all gather in person again. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye. Y'all have a good night.
Bye, you too.
Thank you, everyone.
Everybody.